Welcome to the Writer Reads Chronicles of a Dark God, Book 2, Dark God's Rise, Chapter 38, The Gathering. The delegation and the knights gathered at the Chapel of Many Gods 2 hours later. Indura guided them into a circle and interspersed each pair of humans with an elf. Wary glances passed between those who'd come when he asked them to join hands. Fielding their startled looks with an expression that said his request had been in order, Indura watched as they settled, and slowly did as he'd asked. Once they were settled and had obeyed his request, he asked each of them to focus on the deity they served or worshipped, and to wait for them to speak. As silence dropped like a cloak over the group, the Lord Knight moved quietly amongst them. Every now and then he stopped to change a hand grip or rearrange the way a participant stood. And as he continued to move, the circle took on the form of an intricately woven knot, until even the warriors could sense the power starting to flow. As he moved, Indura did more than rearrange how some stood or held another's hand. Some he took out of the circle and moved to the center of the circle. Most of these were wizards, but there were also priests and veteran warriors who were brought forward. Magrilor observed the Lord Knight's work and tried to understand the magic there, and for a short moment wished he knew more of how the gods functioned. He wished for that understanding all the more when Indura stopped in front of him. Before he could comment, he felt Indura take his hands and carefully break their grip, guiding Magrillo forward so he could rejoin the circle behind him. Lord Darkenoak, the knight said, please take your place in the circle's centre. Magrillo followed the sweep of his hand and inclined his head. As you wish, Lord Knight, he replied, moving to join those who'd been chosen before him. Those in the circle's centre made a place for him, and he took it, warily accepting the hands offered. Settling to his place, Magrillo observed Indura's continued rearrangement. When he was finished, Indura paused. To Magrillo, it looked like the Lord Knight was praying, communing with the gods, he thought. After a moment, he raised his head, then joined those in the circle's centre. Magrillo thought he looked mildly surprised, as though he expected to be a part of supporting those here rather than joining them. Magrillo thought, and wondered why. He is, after all, one of the strongest warriors present. Having found his place among them, the Lord Knight began to speak. Those of you in the centre have been chosen to go forth and seek the Old One's prison. You will travel incorporeal, protecting each other, supplementing each other's weakness, and using what skills you have to locate where we need to go. He drew a breath. Those of you in the outer circle. He was interrupted by the sound of a scuffle at the door and a discreet cough. Then the chief steward's voice raised in protest. My lord, wait! You can't go in. My lord, I beg you. Looking toward the entrance, Magrillo saw the door swing inward and caught Pantera's apologetic gaze as he addressed Indura. I'm sorry, Lord Knight. I tried to stop them. Forgive me. Indura stilled his plea with an upheld hand and then answered. To Magrillo, it sounded as if the Lord Knight had drawn on magic to enhance his voice. It rolled deep and clear across the hall. Thank you, Pantero. You did well. But, my lord, That will be all, Pantero, Indura told him. Allow them to enter. It may be they can help us. Pantera closed his mouth with a snap, compressed his lips in disapproval, then bowed his head. Yes, my lord, he said, bowing deeply and reversing out the door. As he left, those in the circle pivoted to see who had created such a fuss. Several jerked their hands free of those in their grip and dropped their palms to sword hilts. Indura spoke, causing them to hesitate. High Priest Philomath, he said, his voice resonating around the chamber. High magic indeed, Magrilor observed, but the Lord Knight continued. Forgive me, I was in such a hurry to do the god's bidding I did not think to summon you. The mottled-skinned elf in the doorway bowed toward him. My lord Indura, he replied, that is why the gods summoned me themselves. There is no fault on your part. He paused as Magrillo gasped, yanked his blade free of its scabbard, and charged forward. The barbarian standing with him reacted more quickly. He shoved the beast elf aside, pulling the great axe from his back in a single fluid movement. Indura lunged for Magrillo, and his voice boomed around them. There will be no steel drawn in this hall, he roared. Magrillo thought about stopping, but didn't. Such abominations should not be walking the halls of man or ally. As he bounded forward, several things happened in quick succession. The barbarian braced to meet his charge. Endura's fingertips caught at his cloak, and the beast elf laid a hand on the barbarian's shoulder. At first, Magrillo wondered what the priest thought he was playing at, and then the beast elf's ploy became all too clear. He muttered a prayer reminiscent of one he'd spoken earlier, and Magrillo jerked to a sudden halt just before he reached the outer circle. A sudden flurry of movement followed as the human members of the circle laid restraining hands on the elves nearest them, arresting their movement and giving the Lord Knight time to explain. The beast elf glanced toward Endura and clasped his hands before him. "Forgive me, my Lord Knight," he said, "but Staravan requested I come post-haste and join the inner circle with my companions." Endura bowed his head briefly, and those observing him knew he was seeking confirmation from his god. All bowed their heads, waiting for the reply to come. When it did, it was heard by all. "This is our chosen. Heed him well, for he is the sworn bondsman of the King of Gods, the turning point, the linchpin in the war against the Old One's depredations." As the deity's voice died away, the spell holding Magrillo broke, and the elven lord stumbled into the nearest members of the outer circle. His sword clattered to the chapel floor, and he bent, red-faced, to retrieve it. When he had gathered it from the floor, he turned and knelt before Endura. "I ask your forgiveness, Lord Knight," he began. If you will excuse me, I will leave and—" His apology was cut short as Endura spoke. "Stay, Lord Darkenoak," the Lord Knight replied. "You were chosen by powers other than I, and you are needed." Magrillo opened his mouth to argue, but Endura would hear no more. "Stay," I said. Magrillo bowed lower. "As you wish, my lord." He rose to his feet, surprised to find the circle's other members reaching out to steady him. They guided him back to the inner circle, who reached out to draw him in. As he was accepted back in their midst, Magrillo heard movement from the direction of the door, the outer circle moving to allow the beast elf and his entourage passage, and then reweave the arrangement into which they had been placed. Magrillo raised his head enough to watch the elf come, stiffening in equal parts surprise and instinctive loathing when Raoma halted beside him. Not quite managing to stifle the urge to draw back, Magrillo swayed, but kept his feet in place. The beast elf's lips twitched in acknowledgement, but he looked to the Lord Knight. "Forgive the intrusion." "The gods decree it," Endura answered shortly, reaching for Magrillo with one hand and the beast elf with the other. Grasping their wrists, he slid their hands together, meeting their eyes. His look dared Magrillo to deny him. With another effort, the elven lord tightened his grip on the beast elf's hand, gritting his teeth as he reminded himself the newcomer was a representative of the human king of gods, the lord of balance and justice. And such a one chooses carefully who he draws into his service. He waited as the Lord Knight joined the priest's other hand to someone else's in the inner circle, and took a deep breath to steady himself. Never had he thought to be standing so close to one of the Kavarag without having to kill them. He startled when Raomar's lips brushed his ear, the beast elf's breath soft against his skin as he spoke. "Put your prejudices aside, my lord," he said. "There must be no weakness of which the Old One can take advantage when we enter his place of entrapment." Biting back an instinctive protest, Magrillo managed a short, sharp nod, and relaxed when the Kavarag priest straightened away from him. Perhaps things weren't going to go as badly as he thought. Resentment and anger rolled through him, and he fought to calm it. Looking for the Lord Knight, he found Endura inspecting the circle one last time. It didn't take the Lord Knight long to complete his circuit and resume his place at the circle's head. Once he was there, Endura raised his head and looked around the circle. "Now we will pray the gods' descent and blessing," he told them. "It will be their gifting that combines the magic called by the wizards and priests of the inner circle, while those in the outer circle will—" He stopped as the great stones of the chapel wall began to shake and the flags underfoot trembled. He sighed, then drew a deep breath. "Let us wait to see the nature of this disruption," he stated, his voice trembling with restrained patience blended with resignation. The doors rattled at his words as though a great wind buffeted them from the other side. Indira sighed again and left his place, moving through the outer circle for the third time. "If you will excuse me," he said, striding quickly to open the temple doors. As he placed his hand on the large brass ring that served as a door handle, a body of stone erupted from the floor, taking his place at the head of the circle. Endurus stopped, turning the brass ring, even as he looked over his shoulder to see what had arrived. Wind slammed into him, as solid as one of the stone blocks from the wall. It threw him back into the nearest members of the outer circle, then rushed past him. The thing of earth and stone that had formed in the inner circle pivoted toward the newcomer and rumbled a greeting. Enduro was caught and steadied and set back on his feet, while another member of the outer circle belatedly closed the temple doors. Trusting the temple would be secured, Enduro turned toward the two creatures who'd so rudely arrived. "Lord Knight Endura," the earth being said, interrupting him as he drew breath to speak. "You have little time, and we are late. Please attend." The air around Endura grew hands, wrapping airy arms around him and guiding him to a place in the outer rings. Those same hands broke and rewove the linkage of hands around him until the connections in the outer ring seemed as undisturbed as before. Endura felt the creature settle somewhere above him, and knew the scrying would be protected by more than just wizardly magic and the gods. As soon as he was in place, the earth elemental explained the nature of the mountain and the ancient complex in which the Old One's prison had been set. "There is no deterioration in structure," it told them. "The halls are as solid as the day they were built, and as far as we can tell just as empty, save for the traps and guardians we left to guard them. The entry is warded, and you will have to be wary of the traps set there, but we do not know what other breaches have been made by the creature or the Old One's minions." Its gaze swept across them. "So," it concluded, "you have been called." Its eyes rested on the warriors by turn. Warriors, for their strength and the physical protection of the wizards needed for their strength, wielding magic of every kind, and the priests, for their prayers and their connections to the gods. Again its eyes shifted, this time roving the outer circle. "The deities you all serve will protect your physical forms and those who remain here in both spirit and body in the outer circle. They can reach you here, but on the mountain and the citadel itself—" It stopped, radiating concern for those in the middle of the circle. "On the mountain and in the citadel itself the gods have been forbidden all save physical entry." A low murmur trembled through the gathering, surprise and disbelief flowing in the voices of those who spoke. "Exactly," the earth elemental agreed. "For the gods to aid those who travel, they would have to become as vulnerable as any who climb the mountain, which is why you will need to rely on the resources you bring and the support of those who go with you." It waited until a second wave of murmurs died down, then looked toward Endura. "Are you ready?" The Lord Knight glanced at those around him, and then at those in the outer circle. Receiving solemn nods of affirmation, he nodded to the elemental. "We are," he confirmed. It regarded him intently before it replied. "Then let us begin."